It's a cold, crisp Thursday evening in downtown Los Angeles. The city's neon lights shimmer against the night sky, casting long shadows on the bustling streets below. A modest, upscale restaurant sits quietly on the corner, its entrance welcoming only the most refined of guests. The sound of soft jazz floats from inside, mixing with the murmurs of conversation. But tonight, something, or someone, is about to change everything. Elon Musk, the visionary billionaire, founder of SpaceX, CEO of Tesla, and a figure who's both adored and reviled across the globe, is about to step into this world. But there's a twist. No cameras. No entourage. No fanfare. No one knows he's here. Dressed in worn, ragged clothes, with a weathered cap pulled low over his eyes, Musk blends in perfectly with the homeless, forgotten souls who wander the streets of LA. He's not here to make a public appearance, not to push his next big venture, or to take the stage at some high-profile event. No, this time he's on a mission, one that will blur the lines between the rich and the poor, the powerful and the powerless. The question is, why? And how far will Musk go to understand the daily struggles of those living at the very bottom of society's ladder? As he steps through the door of this upscale restaurant, he's no longer the tech mogul we know. He's someone else, a man with nothing to lose and everything to gain. The staff barely glance his way. The patrons don't even notice him. They're lost in their conversations, oblivious to the fact that the man serving them tonight might just be the most influential person in the world. But the true test of this social experiment is about to begin. As the evening unfolds, a shocking twist is on the horizon. Just when it seems Musk's ruse will go unnoticed, the unthinkable happens. The tension in the room begins to rise. Will Elon Musk's undercover experiment unravel the very fabric of the society he spent his life trying to disrupt? Or will it reveal something far more personal, something that will change how we all see the world of the superwealthy and the destitute? Buckle up. The shocking ending to this incredible social experiment is about to blow your mind. The evening begins like any other night in the restaurant, a high-end establishment known for its fusion cuisine and meticulously crafted cocktails. As the doors swing open, patrons are absorbed in their conversations, unaware of the quiet storm about to unfold. Elon Musk, now in disguise, slips past the sleek bar and into the main dining area. His attire, shabby jeans, a faded hoodie, and a cap pulled low, helps him blend into the backdrop of tired faces and quiet murmurs of those seated at tables. No one notices him at first, which, in a way, is exactly what Musk wants. For the next few hours, he's not the billionaire innovator or the tech mogul who revolutionized the electric car or sent rockets into space. No, tonight, he's someone else, a man simply trying to survive in a world that's indifferent to his existence. Musk is on a mission. He's about to put the social hierarchies of wealth, power, and status to the ultimate test. His purpose? To observe, to feel, and to experience life as someone who is invisible to society, the homeless. Musk, for all his achievements, has never truly understood what it means to live without a safety net. He's never had to worry about where his next meal would come from, or if he'd be able to pay rent, or if he'd survive another cold night on the streets. Tonight, he will. The staff continues to bustle around, unaware that the person serving them, and the patrons, might just be a billionaire. He approaches the counter where the restaurant's manager stands, ready to request a seat. The manager eyes him for a moment, but there's no hint of recognition. Instead, he gestures curtly to a small corner table at the back of the room, which is typically reserved for less conspicuous guests. Musk nods and makes his way over. The table is as unremarkable as his appearance, nestled between a row of dim-lit candles and floral arrangements that do little to mask the grimy walls in the corner of the room. He's taken a seat, pretending to study the menu, but his eyes are fixed on the surroundings. He watches as the other patrons come and go, well-dressed couples, businessmen talking deals, tourists snapping photos of their meals. Their world is far removed from his, yet here he is, a part of it now. One by one, the waitstaff approaches to take orders, delivering food and drink with an air of practiced professionalism. The interaction feels hollow, transactional. And yet, something is off. The longer Musk observes, the more he realizes how cold the exchanges are, how invisible everyone who's not sitting at the top of the social ladder feels. No one speaks to the staff as people. They are simply there to serve, and once their tasks are done, they vanish back into the shadows. Musk is disturbed by this. Despite his own immense wealth and influence, he has never quite felt the sharpness of these invisible lines that divide people based not on merit or character but on status. It becomes clear that, for many of the patrons, their wealth is the only thing that matters. Their status is the only thing that provides meaning. A moment passes, and Musk grows more attuned to his surroundings. He notices how uncomfortable the servers are when they approach his table. They don't know whether to engage him in small talk, offer a drink, or rush off. It's almost as though they sense something's not right. Something about this man's presence feels like an intrusion. Then it happens. One of the regulars, an older woman in a fur coat with an accent that could cut glass, turns to her server. She's been loudly complaining about the temperature of her food for the last 10 minutes, and as Musk watches, the server, a young woman barely out of her teens, approaches her table hesitantly. The woman slams her hand down on the table, causing the entire restaurant to go silent. "This is unacceptable. Do you know who I am? I demand you fix this immediately," she snaps. The server shrinks back, apologizing repeatedly as she tries to calm the woman. It's at that exact moment that Musk's calmness snaps into action. He observes how the woman holds all the power, simply by virtue of her wealth and position in society. In contrast, the young server is powerless, at the mercy of every word and gesture. Musk's discomfort grows. He can't just sit idly by anymore. The world he's tried so hard to change, to fix through his companies, seems like a cruel place for those without privilege. The restaurant, though a symbol of sophistication and luxury, has become a microcosm of the inequality that permeates society. As the evening wears on, the tension rises. The servers become more frazzled, the patrons more entitled. Musk begins to feel the weight of the divide. And then, something unexpected happens. A young man, clearly down on his luck, walks into the restaurant. His clothes are ragged, his shoes barely held together with twine. His face is gaunt, his hair matted. He moves past the restaurant's polished doorman, who briefly stops him, eyeing him up and down. The man asks if he can get a seat. The doorman, glancing around the restaurant, gestures toward the side alley, dismissing him without a second thought. The young man hesitates, then turns to leave. That's when Musk stands up. Without hesitation, he walks out from his corner table and stands beside the young man. The doorman is momentarily confused. Musk's disguise has worked. He's been treated as a nobody, just like the man before him. But now, he steps up. "Is there a problem here?" he asks in a firm but calm voice. The doorman stammers, looking nervously between Musk and the young man. He's not dressed for dining in here, sir," he explains. Musk pauses for a moment, his gaze cold. He turns to the young man and says, "Don't worry. Let's get you a table." The room goes silent. The doorman watches in disbelief as Musk leads the homeless man back into the restaurant, guiding him to an empty seat at the bar. The patrons, who had been laughing and chatting moments before, now sit in stunned silence. The servers glance nervously toward the manager, who's left speechless. The stage is set for a confrontation none of them will ever forget. The atmosphere inside the restaurant has shifted entirely. A once serene and polished environment now feels tense, charged with a sense of uncertainty. The homeless man, a mere shadow in the eyes of the staff, now sits at the bar next to Elon Musk, the billionaire in disguise. The patrons who once sat in their little bubbles of privilege are now forced to confront the uncomfortable reality of what they've witnessed. The situation is surreal, almost absurd, yet profoundly unsettling. Musk's quiet act of kindness has upended everything. Conversations come to an abrupt halt as the room watches with bated breath. The doorman is still frozen, his eyes wide, unable to process what he's just seen. He had followed the unwritten rule of the restaurant, a rule that separates the haves from the have-nots, that establishes a rigid hierarchy where no one outside the privileged class is allowed to encroach. The young man, who moments ago was nothing more than an unwelcome presence, is now seated comfortably, placed on equal footing with everyone else. And what's worse, it's all because of Musk. The irony isn't lost on anyone. The very man who could easily have stayed in his mansion or flown off in his private jet to a lavish party has chosen to make this stand in the most unexpected way. The young man, visibly uncomfortable, doesn't know where to place himself. He awkwardly shifts in his seat, unsure if he's in the right place, unsure if he belongs. The bartender, a young man who's been watching the scene unfold, approaches hesitantly, asking if the new guest would like something to drink. There's a moment of silence. Musk, who has been observing the tension building in the room, steps in. "Make him the special," Musk says, his voice calm, unshaken. His words carry weight, not just because of his status, but because of the sheer audacity of his request. The special isn't just any cocktail. It's an expensive, signature drink the restaurant's most elite guests are used to sipping. And yet, the homeless man has just been handed a taste of something so far removed from his life, it's almost absurd. The young man, who had looked ready to bolt just minutes ago, is slowly starting to relax. He lifts the glass to his lips, taking a tentative sip. His eyes widen as the rich flavors of the drink hit his senses. For the first time in what seems like forever, he's treated like an equal. For the first time, someone is showing him the respect that society has always denied him. As the drink settles in front of him, the mood in the room begins to shift again. Musk remains calm, sitting across from the young man. He doesn't speak much, but his presence is magnetic. Finally, one of the patrons at a nearby table, an older businessman who's been watching the exchange with a mixture of disbelief and discomfort, can't hold it in any longer. He leans forward and addresses Musk, his tone dripping with condescension. "You really think giving a homeless man a drink in a fine establishment changes anything?" The words hang in the air like a challenge. There's a hushed silence before Musk responds. Musk doesn't look at the man directly but keeps his eyes on the young man at the bar. "Sometimes, it's not about changing everything all at once," he says, his voice steady and almost soothing. "It's about doing the right thing. The thing that, deep down, we know we should do but so often ignore because it's inconvenient." The businessman scoffs, but Musk doesn't waver. The room remains still, a pressure building in the air as patrons glance from Musk to the businessman and back. The tension is palpable. The question of privilege and power, wealth and status, has taken center stage. But Musk's message isn't lost on everyone. Slowly, the whispers begin. A few patrons, feeling uncomfortable, get up and leave. The businessman, realizing he's not going to get a reaction out of Musk, sits back, his face flushed with anger but also a little embarrassed. The staff, meanwhile, are starting to move a little more freely now. They know something has changed. Something subtle, but profound. Then, just when it seems like the confrontation might settle down, a new voice breaks through the silence. It's the restaurant manager, who has been observing the unfolding events from afar. He steps forward, his face a mixture of confusion, anger, and something else. Guilt, perhaps? He clears his throat and speaks up. "This is a restaurant for people who can afford to eat here," he begins, his tone harsh. "We don't serve people like him. If you want to support them, go to the shelter down the street." There's an audible gasp from the room. Musk looks at the manager, his expression unreadable. The room goes completely still, the weight of his response hanging over everything. Musk rises from his seat. The young man, still sipping his drink, watches him nervously, as if unsure what will happen next. Without a word, Musk walks toward the manager, who stands rigid, ready for whatever confrontation is about to unfold. The moment seems to stretch on for eternity. Musk stands there, inches away from the manager, the tension thick in the air. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, Musk smiles. "You're right," Musk says softly. "This is a restaurant for people who can afford to eat here. But the fact that you just made that statement shows me how broken this system really is." The room holds its breath as the manager blinks, thrown off guard by Musk's unexpected calmness. But Musk isn't finished. "You see, this isn't about charity. It's about basic decency. I don't need your approval or your permission to treat people with respect. And neither does anyone else. So, if you'll excuse me, I'll be leaving now." But he stays. He has every right to be here, just like anyone else. Musk walks out of the restaurant, the door swinging shut behind him. The room is left in stunned silence. The homeless man, once a mere afterthought in this high-end establishment, is now the center of everyone's attention. And as the patrons slowly filter out, one by one, they are left to grapple with the implications of what they've just witnessed. This evening, this experiment, wasn't just about a homeless man in a fine restaurant. It was about the structures of power and privilege, about challenging the very ideas that define society's most basic assumptions. The restaurant manager remains standing, his face pale. The young man at the bar continues to sip his drink, unaware of how his life has been forever altered. As the last patron exits, the camera zooms in on the empty chair where Musk once sat, the weight of his absence lingering in the air. The message is clear. Sometimes, a small act of defiance is all it takes to shatter an entire system. The restaurant, once a place where power and privilege reigned, is now forever changed. The final moments of that evening left an imprint not just on the people inside, but on anyone who hears the story. As the last patrons drift out, leaving behind the echoes of their uncomfortable realizations, a profound silence hangs in the air. The young homeless man who was once dismissed, treated as an invisible, unworthy figure, now sits quietly, still sipping his drink, unaware of the ripples caused by this simple but powerful act of kindness. And yet, in that quiet corner, something extraordinary has happened. Musk's act of defiance, of challenging the boundaries of wealth and social norms, was never about a single moment or a single gesture. It was about sparking a change in perspective. It was about shining a light on the invisible walls we've built between us, the ones that divide us by wealth, status, race, and power. It was about asking a question that too many of us avoid. What is our responsibility to each other? In the weeks that follow, the story spreads. News outlets pick up the tale, and soon social media is buzzing with reactions from people across the globe. Some applaud Musk for his bold move. Others, particularly those with a vested interest in the status quo, dismiss it as a stunt, a gimmick. But amidst the debates and discussions, a larger conversation begins to unfold, one that transcends the individuals involved and asks a deeper question. What kind of world do we want to live in? It's easy to become jaded, to resign ourselves to the idea that inequality and division are simply part of the human condition. It's easy to believe that there's nothing we can do to change a system that has existed for so long. But Musk's small but powerful act is a reminder that change begins with the individual. It begins with seeing others not as categories or labels, but as human beings, deserving of dignity and respect. The wealth, the power, the status we chase so relentlessly, it means nothing without compassion, without empathy, without a genuine desire to make the world a better place. The impact of Musk's undercover experiment doesn't just lie in the fact that he stood up for a homeless man in a restaurant. It lies in the way it made people think, made them question their assumptions about what it means to be human, to be kind, to be generous. And that, in itself, is a revolution of the heart. One that doesn't need to be broadcast or lauded, but simply lived. As we move forward, each of us has the opportunity to challenge the systems that divide us. We have the power to take a stand, to use our positions, whether large or small, to make a difference. The truth is, we are all in this together. We are all part of the same tapestry, woven together by shared experiences, dreams, and struggles. The more we recognize that, the more we begin to see the humanity in each other, the more we begin to break down the barriers that separate us. It doesn't have to be grand gestures or world-changing acts of defiance that create a better world. Sometimes, it's the small, quiet moments of connection, the times when we look past someone's circumstances and simply see them for who they are, that make the biggest difference. And sometimes, the most powerful change starts with a single person making a choice to act differently. As the final patrons leave, the young man continues to sip his drink, his face now lighter, his eyes a little brighter. He has no idea that he's been part of something bigger than he could ever understand. But in that moment, he is not just a homeless man. He is a human being with value, with worth, just like everyone else in the room. And that is the most powerful message of all. So, as the restaurant empties, as the world outside moves on with its routine, let's remember this. Each of us has the power to make a difference. Each of us can choose to act with kindness, with compassion, and with an open heart. We don't have to wait for someone else to take the first step. We can be the change we wish to see in the world. And it all starts with how we see each other. In the end, the true impact of this story isn't measured in the headlines or the social media posts. It's measured in the hearts of those who have heard it, and who have been inspired to do more, to be more. To live with purpose, to challenge the status quo, and to create a world where everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances, is treated with the dignity they deserve.